Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all delegates that join on site in Geneva and also maybe online from Indonesia or from any countries that join with this forum in this year 2023. It's very honor for me actually to lead this sessions that initiated by Indonesian government, which has a theme like strengthening the collaborations of digital literacy for disabilities. And we have two panelists on site here, Mr. Bonnie and also Mrs. Roxane. Thank you for coming and join our session. And also we have one panelist online joining from Indonesia. Hi, Mrs. Anki. Can you hear me? Mrs. Anki? Okay, maybe she has this kind of... Hi, Mrs. Anki. How's Indonesia?
Morning.
Yeah, good morning. I think like Indonesia is evening now, right? Afternoon. Okay. Thank you for joining us, Mrs. Anki. Before we going through the discussion, Q&A session, and the presentation from the panelists, let me introduce them because we know that they have this kind of good, great biography, and it's very honored to be with them today in the session. So within my left, we have Mr. Bonnie Pujanto. He is Director of Informatic Empowerment, Ministry of Communications and Information Technology, Indonesia. Mr. Bonnie obtained his doctoral degree in IT Technology program at KAIST University, South Korea. And prior, he worked for Indonesian Ministry for Communication and Information Technology and was responsible for e-government implementation, particularly on e-government application. And several achievements on government projects have been received, such as design and implementations of a safe and secure internet program, establishing presidential instructions on e-government, setting up several e-government standards, and etc. And he is also active in several international corporations and member of international working groups such as APECTAL Working Group on E-Government, WISIS, ITU, Open E-Governments Forum, Korea-Indonesia Cooperation Project, and many others. So good morning again, Mr. Bonnie.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Next, beside Mr. Bonnie is Roxane Wilmer. Ms. Roxane has worked for the International Telecommunication Union, or ITU, for past 25 years. It's a very long time, actually. And she's contributing to the overarching goal of digital inclusion by focusing on people with specific needs or in vulnerable situations such as women and girls, children and youth, persons with disabilities, other persons, and indigenous people, to ensure all-in inclusive and intersectional approach to the work in digital inclusion. She promotes information and communications, or ICT, in digital accessibility, the universal design of technology as critical enabler of guarantee everyone's empowerment through access to and use of ICT, and equal and equitable inclusion in digital societies, economies, and environment, regardless of their age, gender, physical ability to use the technology, level of education, or geographical locations. As Senior Coordinator for Digital Inclusion and ITU, the focal point, she provides ITU members with specialized advice on developing digitally inclusive policy and strategy, and she leads the development of key ITUD tools and resources intended to support stakeholders' effort in the implementation of related regionals and global commitment, and in building a digitally inclusive work for all, ensuring that no one is left behind in the digital age. Thank you very much for joining us, Mrs. Roxane. The next is joining us virtually. Maybe our technician can pin her on the screen. Mrs. Anki Yudhisthia. She is a presidential special staff of President of Republic of Indonesia. Mrs. Anki Yudhistia is now a special staff for President. She grows her love in field of communication. Therefore, she gained her bachelor degree in advertising and pursue her master degree in marketing communication, both from London School of Public Relations. Recently, she received an Alpha Under 40 award for high-end magazine. And beside her outstanding achievement and career, Anki is hard-hearing person. And this fact made her so long to help disabled people in Indonesia. She is the author of the book A Deaf Woman Through the Limits. And furthermore, she also established Disabled Enterprise in 2011, non-government organization which aim to empower and enlighten disabled in Indonesia to be financially independent. By this far, the organization has trained 5,272 and empower more than 400 disabled people to work at a vocational and professional level. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Anki. Okay, so we will start the session by, actually I have this, before we start the session, I would like to introduce myself. Maybe my name is too long, but you can call me Sasti. I'm coming from ICT Watch Indonesia. ICT Watch Indonesia is one of the first digital literacy organization that has this campaign in Indonesia for Internet Sehat, or we call it Cyber Wise campaign. And in 2017, we got this WSIS award for this campaign. So if you want to visit our booth, we also have our booth in the ground floor. Okay, so we will start with Mr. Boni. Mr. Boni, as you are the representative of the Ministry of Communication and Informatics in Indonesia, we actually very, like if we talk about inclusion, people with special needs, data, the latest data on from BPS or Central Statistic Agency in Indonesia has shown that we have this 22 million people with disabilities in Indonesia, with 70 million of them are in the productive age, but unfortunately just only 7 million people that work and productive. So we are very, willing to know what is actually government, do for this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Asri. Good morning to all audience in Geneva. Good morning in Indonesia, our colleague, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen from around the world. Welcome to WSIS sharing session exclusively from Geneva, held by the government of Indonesia, focusing on strengthening the collaboration of digital literacy for disabilities. Today, I would like to share a portrait of Indonesia digital literacy and the government effort. First of all, before I begin my presentation, it is an honor for me to be here today in WSIS, one of the most prominent events for the society. This is also I also a great pleasure that I will deliver the topic of digital literacy for disabilities, an issue that has been our central attention in the past year. I do hope the discussion and my insight today on the subject will cover all ways to improve the digital society across the world. So in this slide, let me begin our discussion by showing a bit of Indonesia digital landscape. If you look at the figure, it's shown that Indonesia internet users are surpassing and increase fast and have reached for more than 70% of our population. We have around 270 million population, and it means 212.9 million active internet user. Furthermore, our social media user have also increased to more than 167 million people, or in this penetration covered 61.8% from our population. The statistic figures also shown that the average daily time spent using digital device is about 6 hours, 37 minutes, quite high. Later on, to be able to measure the impact of the digital transformation, we also we call it the National Digital Literacy Index. So now the recent result, it is note that we reach 3.54. So we scale from 1 to 5, and compared to the previous year, so it is increased 0.05 or just 5 points. Surprisingly, from the survey, the largest group of internet users are among 18 until 34 years old, meaning dominated by millennial generation or Gen Y and Gen Z. And we identified people motivation in using internet are for entertainment and also for working. And from the result of the survey, it is also mentioned that there are 5 social media platforms are very common to be used, such as Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. However, from this figure, those big numbers also have led to another problem. I'm also certainly know that most of us have been facing this problem all time. The widespread of fake news and hoax through various digital platforms. So this matter relates to the lack of people who put concern on internet and digital safety. Next slide, please. Let's take a look to our strategy. Ministry of Communication and Informatics Indonesia, we adopt the pentahelic methods, starting from upstream to the downstream in handling hoax, hate speech, cyberbullying, and other negative content in internet. In the upstream level, the handling of hoax is carried out through the increasing of digital literacy capacity of the community. The parties are Ministry of Communication and Informatics, and then we have also the program called National Digital Literacy Program with the cybercreacy communities, including all stakeholders. This is already include 121 multi-stakeholders. And then in the middle part, or we call it middle stream level, we have real action. This is combination of human and technology intervention by providing clarification, identifying, and then take down action for negative content such as hoax, and then also pornography content and or other negative content by having cooperation with technology providers and social media platform. Last, it's the downstream level. This is the technical assistance or supervision, and then law enforcement officer provided in terms of reducing spread of hoax, negative content from the perspective of law enforcement point of view. So this is actually, the downstream is the last resource that we want to be avoid actually, because this is the stage to go to the court and then trying to solve the problem instantly. Next, this is, now we are trying to go deeper in what we call the National Digital Literacy Program is. Actually, this is a massive initiative to digitally literate Indonesian people through various ICT training based on 4 digital literacy pillars, namely digital skill, digital ethics, digital safety, and digital culture. This program was launched in 2020 by our president, initiated by Ministry of Communication and Informatics Indonesia, and collaborating with various multi-stakeholders. Now, by having this program, it is hoped that Indonesian people are empowered through technology and becoming a perceptive and competent user of the internet and digital space. So we have a tagline called Indonesia Makin Cakap Digital, or it means Indonesia digitally literate. And then next slide, in order to achieve digital inclusion, the National Digital Literacy Program also focus on people with disability. This mission has goal to empower the uniqueness people with this ability to become strength. During its implementation, the program also used 4 pillars as a basis substance of digital literacy. The 4 pillars also serve as curriculum used in measuring the level of cognitive and affective competence of society in mastering digital technology. Next slide, please. This is just an overview. Several examples of inclusive digital literacy webinars that have been held for people with disability, as well as for their assistant. This is to achieve our mission to make inclusive digital literacy for people with disability. While we implement this program, we also include panelists with disabilities and providing a sign language interpreter to help participants to be able to better understand and comprehend the material. Next slide. This is also the activities. Another inclusive digital literacy activities that has been carried out during the past 2 years. We call it Podcast for Friends with Disability. This is a collaboration project with Pabrik Suara Rakyat. It is a podcast community, and also with the Spotify Indonesia, the digital platform, which aim to introduce and train broadcaster and for people with disability, and more specifically for those who are visual impairment. Next slide, please. Okay, last but not least, we made a digital literacy index survey, as I mentioned before, as one of the efforts to monitor the level of digital literacy achievement for the Indonesian people and use as a reference for program planning from the year to year. The measurement of Indonesian Literacy Index in 2022 refers to the framework in the 2020 until 2024 digital literacy roadmap. So just a little bit glimpse during the presidency Indonesia at G20, this research has been adopted by Digital Economy Working Group as a toolkit for measuring digital skill and digital literacy. So quite plenty of effort from our country. Hopefully this is also can encourage the people with disability to utilize ICT as their tool. So thank you very much. Back to Saskia.
Thank you, Ms. Bonnie, for the explanation. So Indonesia have a lot of disability initiative program or initiative that both we do online and also offline. As mentioned before, we have some webinars that invite people with disabilities to be the panelists, and also we have this sign language system that we use during the webinar, and also some of this offline activities such as podcasts. Yes, in collaboration with Spotify Indonesia and also Suara Rakyat. I think this is a good example of how collaboration is actually can increase, the opportunities for people with disabilities accessing digital literacy. So next, thank you, Mr. Bonnie. Next, we will move to Mrs. Anki Yudhistia that join us online. Miss Anki, for ladies and gentlemen that maybe come after in the middle of the session. So Mrs. Anki is the special staff for President of Indonesia, which she is very focused on disability movement in Indonesia. Mrs. Anki, can you hear me? Or can you mute yourself, Mrs. Anki? Or somebody can help me to, okay. Hi, Mrs. Anki.
Okay. Good morning, Engineer.
Hi.
Indonesia. Hello, good morning, everybody.
Hi, good morning, Mrs. Anki. Mrs. Anki, is very special to invite you to this to join this session, especially on how actually the portrait of disability in Indonesia. I've stated some number in front of. It's a huge number and also a dilemma for Indonesia actually, especially in the gaps of accessing technology, the skills, and also utilizing informations obtained from the internet for the people with disability. Maybe if you can give us the portrait of disability in Indonesia and what strategies actually need to be, we need to do in harnessing the digital technology. Maybe you can start your presentations or something. Your time is 10 minutes, Mrs. Anki. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I'm sorry I could not join engineer because I came back from Japan. But please, I can continue and meet all of you. Well, today, for about how is the portrait of disability in Indonesia. Well, I'm disability and how persons with disability are citizens for basic human rights must be protected and the rights of citizens must be fulfilled. For example, human rights, namely the right to live and the right to be free from discrimination. Moreover, the right of a citizen is the right to have education, work based on their capacity, and treated equally to people who are not disabled. In this digital area, one important necessity for them is the right to get digital access in the area they live at. Well, the development of the terms oblige any citizen without exception, including those with disabilities, to have and continue to develop digital-based knowledge. Well, well,
Okay, Mrs. Anki, please wait. Operator, try to present your presentation.
okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. President Jokowi in his speech during the commemoration of International Day of Disabilities on December 6, 2022 demanded for accelerated of transformation for disabilities in Indonesia. This confirms that the integration of social and digital life is absolutely necessary to support the improvement of the quality of Indonesian human resource. Sorry, I'm still not yet to show this presentation, please. I'm sorry, please. You can come back because I'm still not sure. Okay. Okay. Well, we talk about Mr. Jokowi side. This also makes it easier for people with disability to get access to various services that are connected systematically in the form of digital data. Well, we talk about the data. Ensuring digital access for people with disability will open more opportunity to work as entrepreneurs. This is because the information is more accessible to develop vocational skills. Data from the Ministry of Manpower states that only 0.00 2% of only 3,000 for 3,000 more workers with the disability. And however, is considering very low if we compare to the total number of people with disability in Indonesia, as many as 20.98 million people, of which 90.5 million are working age. But data from the Ministry of Manpower says that only 3,000 workers with disability are currently employed into the job market. So, with the assurance of equally access to digitalization for disability, it will create new opportunities that are very beneficial for persons with disability throughout Indonesia. Okay, next question.
The next question is what exactly the strategies should be taken in order to increase the participations for the people with disabilities in harnessing digital technology, Mrs. Anke?
Okay, the strategy. Well, the government through the Minister of Communication and Informatics as the leading sector. Hello, Mr. Boni. Mr. Boni, as the representative of Minister of Communication and Informatics and as the leading sector, I think has carried out its role in supporting efforts to create a disability-friendly digital space. We continue to support it by making joint collaborative efforts to guarantee the right of disability to get equal access to digital technology. Development of the Internet of Things must involve and target disability as a subject that is actively included in every technological innovation. Therefore, disabilities in Indonesia actually participate in the nation's process, which is increasingly moving forward with the changing time. For right now, and Indonesia, therefore, disabilities in Indonesia. All of you can see this picture how the blind access smartphone. They cannot see, but they can hear. We have a trainer to help them how to use smartphone. It must be step by step until the blind is understand how to use the app and also how to visual environment. They cannot hear, but they can see. For next, this picture, rumah digital untuk disabilitas or digital disability home was registered and announcement by Jakarta Governor, and more than around 100 more people with disability. And for right now, the member in app, the data is almost 100,000 people with disability in active in digital. Well, digital technology-based training for disability must be increased and become our collective concern. Both the government, the private sector, and civil society to encourage persons with disabilities to become more empowered and have the same capabilities as other citizens in matters of digital technology. So, referring to President Jokowi, no one left behind, can be realized without discrimination and promote equality in society as a nation. Thank you very much from Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anki, for the presentation. It actually is very good if we align with what our president said, that no one left behind, especially for people with disability. And then Mrs. Anki said that now she initiate the digital house for disabilities people. So it would help disability people in Indonesia to access more digital literacy based on their needs. And it's invite a lot of stakeholders to join this actually to increase the impact of this digital house for disability. Thank you, Mrs. Anki. We will go to the third panelist here, Mrs. Roxanne, as a Senior Coordinator Digital Inclusions of ITU. Mrs. Roxanne, I have two questions actually, but I know that you have, video to be played. But before that, let me state my questions. I'm very curious how actually ITUs work in ICT accessibility, including the policy and also the strategies to achieve digital inclusion to persons with disabilities, ranging from the age or gender and location.
Good morning. Thank you very, very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to share this session with Indonesia, that we consider one of the role model in the Asian Pacific in how they approach the topic. Because of the complexity of the subject, let's have a step back. Why we are here? We are here because we live in a digital age, and every aspect of our life, in a way, it's impacted by technology. And information is power, and how to reach information is to knowledge. And that's why it's so important initiative like the ones taken by the Indonesian government to see how to become literate. So, as you know, the offline rights and the online rights are the same. In particular, if the online rights are, let's say, access to education, access to labor, access to health. So it's so important to know how to do this. And we are all different. We have different backgrounds. We come from different parts of the world. Some of us are illiterate. So it's not an easy task for the governments and for the world to bring everyone together, because if not, because of the digital gap that can be created, we will, without willing, let people behind, like persons with disabilities, like illiterates, like migrants, like people living in remote areas, and or those from social economic development that cannot afford this entering into these digital ecosystems. So to respond to your question, the approach that ITU wants to give to this subject is accessibility. And why and what it is inclusion and accessibility. Inclusion is not to work on silos, because people by nature, we are evolving. The youth of today are the world of tomorrow. In any moment of our life, we can have an event that put us in a disability situation. And thanks God, by default, those of us who can get older, we will face age-related disabilities, less hearing, less vision. So inclusion is to have this holistic vision and intergenerational approach. And with this, and why accessibility is so important, accessibility is like in a physical environment, the ramp with regards to stairs, no? In a ramp, everybody can go. So with your permission, I just want to wrap up this into a very small video, which I invite you, and then I will share all the links with you because it's captioned in many other languages. So the video, please. The video will explain actually what it is ICT accessibility.
ICT digital accessibility, the key to achieving a digitally inclusive world. We're living in an increasingly interconnected world. Information and communication technologies, or ICTs, have become an important part of our everyday lives. While millions of people connect daily to work, obtain information, receive education, buy essential products and services, and socialize, many others from vulnerable groups are being left
Can we put it
behind.
from the beginning, please?
Digital inclusion is a foundation upon which digital communities can be built to bridge the digital gap. And ICT accessibility, ICT digital accessibility, the key to achieving a digitally inclusive world. We're living in an increasingly interconnected world. Information and communication technologies, or ICTs, have become an important part of our everyday lives. While millions of people connect daily to work, obtain information, receive education, buy essential products and services, and socialize, many others from vulnerable groups are being left behind. Digital inclusion is a foundation upon which digital communities can be built to bridge the digital gap, and ICT accessibility is the key enabler. As a ramp ensures access for everyone in the physical environment, ICT accessibility facilitates the attainment of digital inclusion for all. Digital accessibility guarantees that all people, regardless of gender, age, ability, or location, benefit on an equal and equitable basis from the opportunities offered by ICTs. Accessible ICTs are devices with embedded accessibility features from the design stage. For example, smartphones. But accessible equipment is not enough for everyone to understand information and be able to interact. To guarantee access to and use of ICTs by all people, regardless of their specific capabilities, needs, and/or circumstances, digital content, as well as any product or service provided through digital platforms, must also comply with the accessibility guidelines and related standards. For example, in a noisy space, a person could communicate through a chat, just as a person with a hearing disability would. A visually impaired person will send voice messages, just as a person caring for a baby does, or someone who cannot use their hands to write. A migrant or a person who does not master a language can access important information if it is provided in easy-to-read or intuitive formats, which will also serve a person with cognitive disability. 3 building blocks are needed to achieve digital inclusion for all. Access and digital infrastructure to ensure internet connectivity is in place. Affordability, so that users can afford internet access and buy devices to connect. Accessibility of ICTs, which is key to fulfilling digital inclusiveness for all people and encompasses implementation of ICT accessibility policies, regulations and standards. Development of accessible ICTs, including devices, products and services. Appropriation and digital knowledge skills by all end users. Building inclusive digital communities is everyone's responsibility. Only through collective efforts will we successfully build the digitally inclusive world we want. Join ITU's work in ICT digital accessibility. For more information, please visit our website and resources, www.itu.int.
Thank you very much. So let's begin with the end. We all want to have a digitally inclusive world for all. And we can achieve this if jointly we manage to collaborate and try to bring together efforts to achieve this. So what IT is doing is putting together all stakeholders through our work, for instance, through the study groups on question 7, which I warmly invite you all to attend as member states or sector members. In these groups, we try to incentivize governments to ensure that all their products and services purchase, you know that governments are the biggest buyer in the world now. So we really want that everything is purchased in digitally accessible format to ensure, for instance, that e-government services are digitally accessible to all. That national plan for emergency telecommunications, for instance, so necessary, are accessible for all to save everyone. We also work with industry to incentivize them that they develop and design only accessible equipment. That means to have accessibility feature from the design stage, as you saw it, so necessary. Actually, I think everybody here is using accessibility features. Are you sending text message? Who are sending text message? I think everyone is sending text message and even voice messages. Yes, we are also. So these are accessible features. The text message are actually for a deaf person, initially developed, and we use it without knowing that we are using actually accessibility features. So accessibility is for all. And if industry will develop this equipment into an accessible way, perhaps prices will go down, perhaps everybody will have the possibility to use it, and so on. There is also private sector, a very important role to play to ensure that also websites and digital services are accessible for persons with disabilities, but also for older person, and as I said, for all of us, academic members. Yes, they have to definitely adapt their curriculum and to respond to the needs of this fourth industrial revolution, which is digital. We do have to train people at national level to know how to develop and to do project that the ones just presented by the distinguished speaker next to me, in which digital skills are so important. Of course, that like in every part of education, we have to be careful, to be ethical, to be secure. So all this is a package that we have to encompass, but it's important to be digitally skills. And finally, civil societies. Well, civil societies is so important because we have to go top down, but also bottom up. So the voice of the civil society is so important in whatever action we are doing to support all this effort, but also to use persons with disabilities as validator of the solution that governments are doing. And everything is done to ensure that fully respond to the end user needs. So with this in mind, I stop here. I'm trying to keep my tracking, but I'm all yours if there is any other question.
Yes, I thank you, Mrs. Roxanne. I actually have one more question is, from what you have said and explained to us, is there any tools or, resource that we can use or support, to support these global implementations or on this?
Absolutely, and I will share with all. So ITU developed over 70 resources to support all stakeholders' efforts in this global implementation. As I saw, it's very difficult to put all this on the shoulder of a government. We all have to contribute. Our resources are free of charge in multiple languages, and I will share the link with you to be able to access. We have many trainings, of course, online, self-paced trainings, and many thematic reports and model policy reports for government and for everybody. But I just want to pay attention to one of the last resource, which is Together Building Inclusive Digital Communities. We develop a sort of toolkit, which is very interactive. And in about 15 minutes, considering some question that you have to respond to this, you will receive back-to-back guidelines, best practices, and what to do to accelerate. And this toolkit, what is very important to know, is based on the requirements of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that include articles related to technologies. And guess what? Almost every article includes something related to technology. As I saw, it's about education, it's about labor, it's about public participation in the socioeconomic life of a country. So in this way, you can have let's say a baseline where we are, but also because you can continuously do this test, if you want, you will receive further policy and strategy advice. You can also monitor the development. So I will in particular ask you if possible to take a look on this and to use it and to share among your networks, because actually all is about knowledge, about what you say. People do not know that IT is doing so much effort to support all stakeholders on this. So it's all yours. Please distribute it, please use it, and please join us in the efforts to together, because everybody's work make a difference, but only by working together we can make the change we want to do this world inclusive for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Roxanne. I think we're waiting for the link, and for the people who are joining us on the Zoom, maybe our operator will send you directly the link. But then for the people that join us on site, maybe after this, we will share you the link that Mrs. Roxanne had said before. So I think we still have 10 minutes for the sessions, and very open if you have any question, feedbacks, or stories that maybe enrich these discussions this morning. So I will give the chance to the floor if there's any questions. Okay, please. You can say your name and organization and maybe your country, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Babakir Turabi from Sudan, Tebra Digital Telecommunication and Post-Regulatory Authority. I would like to thank the presenter for the informative and valuable presentation and information. And my question is a general question. It is not for the presenter. It is for all of us. When the time will come to make an international strategy for inclusion for people with disability. Now we are in Sudan, we have a strategy for people with disability, for inclusion, and for how to help them and how to include them in the society. And my belief, it is the same for all the people who are attending this forum. But we need one international strategy for inclusion for people with disability. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Mrs. Roxanne or Roxanne, could you like to give a back of that?
Thank you for the question. So definitely this is very important, and I have to get back to congratulate Indonesia. As you know, last year it was Jakarta Declaration of the Asian Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities, which resulted into actually the new declaration now for 2023-2032. So definitely there is an effort to ensure that persons with disability are fully included in the digital world. Of course, that at government level, I would say the efforts are in particular concentrated to the policy part. So the policy and strategies to ensure that for instance, research is done for assistive technologies, because the accessible technologies definitely works for most of the disability issues, but there are particular disabilities which should only be solved through assistive technology. We do hope that with the evolution of the artificial intelligence and emerging technology, this will be solved. But meanwhile, this should be a common effort to ensure that these people also have access to technology. I will also say that policies like the one emerging now through COVID, thanks COVID, I would say is not politically correct to say it, but COVID show us all that actually it's so important to be online connected, because otherwise you cannot eat, you cannot access to your medicine, you cannot be in contact with your family members. So COVID force us actually to make decisions, to implement policies and strategies that we were thinking, okay, we will do it. But the moment of COVID was a wake-up call and say, we have to do it yesterday. So I'm a strong believer that with the support of the civil society, who can definitely support governments, support industry, to say, we are here, and it's not only for us, because even if you contact industry or private sector, you can say you want to increase the value of your business, no? So you left behind many end users. So everything is very much interlinked, and this is not just to do because it's correct to be done from ethic perspective, but from so many other perspective, which is inclusion of everyone, which is we cannot talk about person with disabilities without talking about ourselves. You know, it's our future tomorrow, as I say, in case if age-related disabilities are there. So everybody should put this effort, and I cannot give you a time line, but what I can say, it's sooner the better. So it depends on the collaboration, I would say, that can be established at all levels within the stakeholders, to put together also the financial means to build this now, because otherwise, if we develop, let's say, e-platforms which are not accessible, websites which are not accessible, to come back and to solve this, the cost will be much bigger. So better to try to do it well from the design stage, rather than coming back to say, oh my God, we invest so much money in this platform for health, and we realize that actually most of the people cannot access, because health is in particular when we get older and we need so much to have support. And if it's not digitally accessible, to have, let's say, a text to speech to understand what is really saying, I cannot access. So we do not have a perfect answer, I would say, unfortunately, but this depends of the commitment, of the involvement, of the desire to really do it good and to do it well. So I don't know if this is complete, but it's at least the way that ITU is trying to approach the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roxanne. I hope that answered your questions from Sudan. Next, maybe because we have this tight time before we end the session, before we go to the man, could I allow the ladies? Because, okay, so, okay. Could I go for the ladies first, and then, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Kinao Pepe Laelo. I work for the Universal Access and Service Fund in Botswana. I would like to thank you, Indonesia, the two presenters, for the detailed information that you shared with us on Indonesia this morning. I note your huge number of people in the country, the population. I come from a population of only 2.3 million. So I note the number of the high number of people with disabilities that you have in your country, and the strategies or the initiatives that you've put across to assist them. I would also like to thank you, ITU, for the resources that you've put for the benefit of people, to include everyone, covering as well people with disabilities. In Botswana, under the Universal Access and Service Fund, we do have a strategy that has an initiative that is deliberate for people with disabilities. We do provide ICT infrastructure and internet services for centers for people with special needs. It could be physical disabilities or children that come from unstable families. We do provide computer devices, internet services, as well as training for the employees that are working for these centers. We train in areas such as first aid, as well as general training that the employees would need for a particular center. So it is not enough because we always have the issue of funds. So sometimes some centers would benefit, others would benefit after a long time, but there is considerable effort. We will be now going into the demand side because we are covering the supply side in terms of devices and internet. But now what about the demand side? Applications as well as maybe devices that are tailor-made specifically for people with disabilities. So I wanted to share that from our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the story for Botswana. Am I correct for that? Yes. Thank you very much, Ms. Kina. I think like after this, maybe we can mingle together and then share on how we can collaborate each other between Indonesia and also your countries. Next, please, the last questions. Okay, so thank you very much. Is there any questions, last question for this session? No one? You want to add something?
Okay, mine was just a question directed at Indonesia. I note the efforts they are making, well appreciated. And my simple question was going to be, who is the driver? You spoke about a strategy that is anchored on 4 pillars in Indonesia. And I know it's well and it's good enough to say it needs collaborative effort from all of us. But I'm just interested in who is driving this strategy. We can't all be passengers, obviously. There has to be a bus driver somewhere. And I'm just interested in how you operationalize that strategy in Indonesia. Is there a particular entity that pushes this strategy and the rest of the other people or other entities converge and collaborate around one entity? And that is what I'm interested in. I know in Botswana we are trying through the regulator, and obviously the regulator I don't think is the right body really to be pushing especially digital literacy across all sectors, not just people with disabilities.
So thank you so much for the question. So actually the Ministry of Communication and Informatics lead this program. Right. So the program called Digital Literacy Program, and then it is a basic necessity for people to know about how the digital transformation gave a benefit and value added for the people. In spite of that, we also have to encourage people to avoid any negative impact that might impair to the people. So it is necessary for people to know about digital safety, because there are so many information might be hoax or misinformation that need to be avoided to minimize any negative impact that causes the society. Even though we are focusing on technology, the Ministry of Communication Informatics, but we are also working together with multi-stakeholders. This is very important because government as a mind master creating a micro program, but it is only be possible to be implemented if there is a collaboration. So the multi-stakeholders is an essential part of the successful mission. That is the story of us. Thank you so much.
I don't know if the time permits, just to complement a little bit. So actually, your question, it's so pertinent and gets back to the very first what I said. It's really a huge responsibility to say that all is on the shoulder of the regulator of the Ministry of Telecommunication, because it's about health. So it's Ministry of Health or Ministry of Telecommunication? It's education, it's Ministry of Education or Ministry of Telecommunication? It's, and so on, labor, because digital, it's everywhere. I would say that it's everyone's responsibilities. Of course, that the way ITU is doing, under the leadership of Ministry of Telecommunication, of the regulators, depending on who is our member state. But when we are doing such trainings, we actually ask to invite everyone from the government. Why? Because digital accessibility should be mainstream everywhere. Should be mainstream transportation, because if you don't have an application and the application on your mobile is not accessible, you will walk. You cannot take your ticket. In health, if you don't have accessible website to have your appointment to the doctor, so you cannot go to the doctor, to education, to labor, and so on. So it's everyone's responsibilities. And I would say the leadership, yes, we can say that the leadership should be under the telecommunication, but everyone can take the leadership. So please feel free, and whoever it's, and even a private sector, an academic member, everyone can take the leadership, because digital, it's in every aspect of our life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roxanne. Before I give the conclusions, I think like I saw Mrs. Anki raise her hand online. Mrs. Anki, do you want to add something on this? Please. Could you hear me? Mrs. Anki?
Okay. Okay. I want to additional answer about Indonesia. Indonesia ratified CRPD, Convention of People with Disability, on 2011, and Indonesia has the law for the fulfillment on the rights of persons with disability, which is on number 8 year 2016 on persons with disability, without various derivative regulations in the form of 7 government regulations and 2 presidential regulations. Moreover, to regulate technically many aspects on fulfilling the rights of persons with disability, namely education, economy independence, health, infrastructure, especially digital infrastructure, transportation, employment, communication, and justice. Well, disability is clearly accommodated as one of the disability variety. The law decides like physical disability, sensory disability, physical-social, intellectual disability, and multiple disability. Well, Indonesia has many numbers, and we have had many discussions regarding the role of parents, educators, health workers for the growth and disability based on the data from Statistics Indonesia. Because we have the big number, and some of this Indonesia is best practice regarding the empowerment of special needs. This is very conducted by various organizations that provide programs so that person with disability can achieve their best potential program. Include digital literacy, for coaching, and development many education. Well, Indonesia has many programs to competitive the art exhibition and training program and many more. And Indonesia has built good bilateral relationships in various sectors with many countries, such as with the Japan. I just come back from the Japan. Japan, Indonesia built good bilateral in research and education. And we are prepared to children with disabilities to adapt it with new adaptive and pandemic area, and how people with disability can get education of the best of their potential. Because Indonesia many open with all stakeholders in domestic and bilateral. So that's why Indonesia has the many good numbers, but we have the good collaborate the many stakeholders. Maybe in this can be best practice for all of you as the from any country. Indonesia will be great, will be what we like to happy to collaborate together with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Anki, for the response. I think that the time is enough for this session, and I know that a lot of you want to, ask directly maybe to Mr. Boni or Mrs. Roxanne here in person, or maybe connect with Mrs. Anki on social media, because she's very active on social media. So you can reach her easily on social media. But before I close these sessions, I would like to give a short conclusions, which I believe that would be our homework, quote unquote, and add something more on our plate to discuss in the future. Because, the strengthening of collaborations of digital literacy for disability is crucial to promoting equal access to digital technologies, empowering individuals with disabilities to fully participate in society. And as what Mrs. Roxanne said before, why we are here, who is responsible with this? And the answer is we, us here is responsible to this, because sooner or later we will be in that situation also, like last hearing, last see, and then we are very responsible on this issues on disabilities. So I invite you all after this event to network together and talk and discuss about and explore on how we can strengthen our collaborations toward inclusivity on disabilities, people on digital space. Thank you very much for joining these discussions. In Indonesia, we say terima kasih. Good morning.
Thank you very much.